I am Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska and the Gallup offices in Sydney, Australia. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on April 21st, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategy to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you. It's right below the main video window, and you can use any social media login that you want to log into it, and there's even a guest way to log in, best way to get your questions into the chat, and we'd love to have you join us live if you can do that as well. If you are listening to the recorded version or have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, and large organizations, contact us, send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. That's really the best email for any questions you have for us. And of course, you can use the contact page there at the coach's blog at coaching.gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just gallupcenter.com, all one word, for your coaching resources and training needs. And you can also catch the video and now both streaming and downloadable audio. Recapture that time you have in the car or in a train or on a plane by listening to the recorded version of it. All available, all that information you need to get that done. You can send it over to coaching.gallup.com. Ann Lingefelter is our host today. She works as a learning and solutions consultant there in our Sydney, Australia office. And Ann, I'm not going to lie, you sound a little Yankee. So how did you end up in Australia?
Just lucky, I guess, Jim. No, I am American. You're right. I think my accent has gotten a little softer since I've been out of the States for quite a long time now. Actually, almost 20 years I've been out of the States. But I've been in Australia for 10 years. Was in Asia before that, and I have to tell you, Jim, the strengths movement is alive and well down under. It feels a bit like a frontier out here with strengths, but it may be interesting for your viewers in the States to realize just how involved and motivated our strengths coaches are out here, and how strong the strengths movement is really globally. It's fantastic to be a part of it.
Well, Ann, welcome to your first Call to Coach, and we're glad you joined us today.
Thanks very much, Jim. Deborah Protter is our guest today, and Deborah is an amazing woman. You're going to be blown away by her resume, I'm sure, just as I was. She runs a consulting business in Western Australia called the Values Partnership. In addition to that, she is the chairman of the Western Australia board of the Hunger Project, which is a not-for-profit mission to eradicate hunger in the world. Deborah, welcome to Call to Coach.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. I have to tell you, Deborah, when I saw your bio, I really was just blown away. I mean, you've got so much, 30 years international experience educating, training, and mentoring executives and leaders within government agencies, companies, community-based organizations, working a lot of work with women and public health and international development across the globe. Tell me a bit more about your experience.
I think if I think about what's at the heart of, because when you read that, I think, oh my goodness, is that me? But I think about, and because I kind of cover a lot of different spheres of life and I suppose commitments that I have, but I think at the heart of it is, of all of it, is the unique possibility of each human being. And that's why I included the strengths work in my work, because I just believe that each one of us is unique, and that we need to contribute to the world our unique potential. So I've always, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whether you're in business or whether you're trying to eradicate hunger or whatever, it's all about unleashing the potential of human beings. And I think that's the key thing in all I do, whether it's as a wife or a mom or in contributing to ending hunger. It's all about that unleashing human potential. And And you know, that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah, and I think that strengths is such a powerful instrument in doing that because it is so democratic. And as you say, it's something that can be used in the C-suite all the way down to, you know, into being very powerful in individuals' lives as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But I want to talk more about that, but let me just back up one little bit because we can't really start this without understanding your top 5 and what your signature dominant themes are.
Yeah, so my top 5 are maximizer is my number 1, connectedness is number 2, positivity is number 3, individualization number 4, and empathy number 5. And I so own those things, own those strengths, and yeah.
Can you give us an example of just grab one of them and just how do you use it to be the best version of Deborah Protter that there is?
Well, I think maximizer definitely is. I think during the strengths training, when I did the Gallup coaching training, I think the maximizer, I wasn't really fully aiming that in my life. I hadn't owned that fully, and I remember the guy who was leading the training said, oh, and I've got connectedness as number 2, and he said, oh, you know, that I've got strengths envy because I'd love maximizer and connectedness. And I was like, well, why would you like, you know, maximizer and connectedness? And he said, well, because those things just make such a difference. And I don't know, that made me wake up to explore the possibility of those two things together, but particularly maximizer. And so I know that I only like working, I'm not really, you know, I've got like restorative at 34 or something. So if I'm not really, problems make me want to go to sleep, but something that's already, you know, something that's already brilliant, I want to make it better. And so that's been very, very good for me in terms of looking at who do I want to work with, what kind of leaders do I want to work with. So, you know, a lot of my work is with leaders, but I want to work with leaders who are visionary, up to something, and work with them in reaching their potential, their own leadership. So that maximize. So I'm not, you know, I wouldn't be good in something that was just not already doing well. Also, I've been involved in developing a lot of programs which have gone around the world, but I've come in on them when they were like going, oh, we want to take this to the next level, and I've come in and gone, okay, I'll help you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to mention to our coaches that are listening, that really understanding who you should be coaching, and that every coach is not just the perfect coach for every client, and really understanding, looking at your strengths and how you can use those, and who you would be most effective with.
Yeah, and I think that's a sort of journey, really. I think since I did the coaching, I did the first coaching course in Australia, and since then I've just been really trying to get clearer and clearer about where am I aiming my strengths in this strengths-based area, and who do I want to be working with, and you know, in what areas as well, you know, because I can work in all these areas. Well, so which areas do I particularly want to work in?
Yeah, and so it sounds like you say that you've been targeting leaders and that's been working quite well for you. Can you give us, you know, an impact story really about how you've been able to work with strengths in the C-suite or with some leaders from different corporations, and how that's how you've used strengths to do that?
Yeah, well, I've coached leaders in all different domains of life. So I've coached corporate leaders. I think that I don't know, my works, you know, I work with a lot of people who are already very good at executing. You know, they're like really good in that area, but their lives are just like, you know, they have one life and it's all about work. So I think a lot of my work is about has been about people getting the leaders getting their strengths, but also getting that leadership isn't just about one domain of life, it's leading in all of life. So it's your family, it's your well-being, it's being an example to others. You know, are you on your computer at 12 o'clock at night sending emails? You know, that little thing, but it's a big thing. You're sending out a message. So I think a lot in my coaching, it's getting leaders to see that leading is the whole of life. It's not one little aspect of life, it's the whole of life. So, and it's interesting, it's not like I start with them like that. You know, we start with their strengths, we start with, you know, KPIs and all of this, but I also do a lot of values work with them. And when you start talking about values, you know, people say, you know, well, what they value is a lot more than work, but actually what they're spending 90% of their time on is all their work. So I kind of, I don't know, I kind of get people to loosen up and see that their modeling is very important, and what they're modeling. And so, like one guy, like I've got two guys who are, you know, incredible leaders in their own right. And one of them had big health issues. He had pneumonia, and so he had to have a lot of time off. He's got 3 young boys, and and when he came to me, he was really leading a big project, and but really worried about his well-being, and you know, just working on his strengths and working on his values just had him see that he just was just unbalanced. You know, his life was not balanced, and he got to see that taking care of himself was the smartest thing to do, and that it wouldn't mean he actually would mean that he would be better at his job and more effective at his job, and also he got to value himself, like he saw himself as a resource, and as a resource he has to take care of himself, right? You know, for his people, and he had to change a lot of his practice. So one of the things he did, very practical, was he didn't live too far away from work, never had lunch before. So one thing he did was he left his desk and he drove home, and he went home and he had a break and he had lunch at home, and sometimes his wife could even join him at home, and he did that. Just one thing he did that altered his whole life. Yeah. The other thing is he used to do this amazing thing, which he'd go away for 2 weeks on his own into the wilderness, and he was thinking that was a bit of a stupid thing to do, and maybe he shouldn't be doing it. Maybe it was a week, I can't remember. But what he saw was that was absolutely crucial to his person, to himself, to do that. So these are just sort of like, it's all about self-awareness, I think.
100%. And it's interesting because as you're talking about him and you're talking about the other leaders that you've worked with, I'm struck by this feeling of how lonely it can be in that position, and how isolated they are, and how overwhelmed they can be from, you know, just the day-to-day and just, you know, meeting to meeting, and just really no time to sort of step back and look at themselves and their life in a bigger picture. And it seems like you're providing that place for them to have that reflection, and holding that mirror up to them and saying, right, here's the strengths that you naturally have. How can you harness these to impact your life as a whole, right?
Yeah. So, and a couple of these guys that I was just mentioning, they work for a huge organization that does enormous amounts of training. They invest in their people, but this strength stuff was like, at the end of it, they had to sort of assess me and say what they thought about this program, you know, and they were like, the best thing of the whole thing was strengths. They were like, they were talking about it like it was this incredible thing that just made such a difference to them. And, you know, their companies probably paid hundreds and thousands on their training, and then you know, little me goes and does this work with them, and they they're just like, this is incredible, and they all want their kids to do it. They all want their wives to do it because they become strengths champions, you know.
And Deborah, once that happens, once they see the power of it and how they can use it in their own lives, what's the next step? How do you coach them to take it then into their corporation at a better level, really embed it into the DNA? How do they then take it to the managers? I mean, what's the next step?
Well, one of the guys that I'm working with, I've been working with him and coaching him for about a year. So, you know, it just took a while for us to get to know one another, and for him to get, you know, a year's coaching in strengths is a fantastic thing. And so, you know, at the end, as we were going towards that, he was like, I want this in my organization. And it's a big organization in Western Australia. I want this in my organization. Can you work with my next level of leadership? And I said to him, yeah, but I would, but you know, I just told him what he was taking on. I said, look, if you take, you know, this is about having a culture of strengths in your organization, not about me coming in and doing, I've done enough work. I don't need to go in and just do one thing. I want to make sure he's like really committed. So he was like, no, you know, I can see the value in this. I want this because I can see the potential right down the line to our clients. So, so I work with his teams, and he's now told me he's so committed to this. He's now going to book in to do the training himself in Sydney.
Oh, so the accelerated strengths coaching.
Yeah,
yes, fantastic.
Yeah. So he's going to do that.
That's brilliant. And I guess what I'd be interested to know, and I think our coaches that are out there listening would be interested to know as well, what are the most effective cultural hallmarks that you sort of find need to be present in organizations in order for strengths to get embedded? You know, what are some ways that they can really get it into the fabric of their business?
Well, first of all, it has to come from the top. I mean, everybody knows that with anything, but it has to come from the top. And I don't know, I feel like I'm, you know, with this strengths thing, I feel like I'm so learning. So I don't feel I'm any guru in this at all because I'm so learning. But in terms of my learning with the groups that I've been working with in Western Australia, I think one is you can't rush this process. If you want to transform an organization, you cannot rush it. So I've been telling him all the time, let's just take it step by step. You know, let's get it embedded with your leadership team, like really embedded with them. Let them own it. Let's start. So let's not rush this. This is like a long-term, you know, working it out together. I'm not like, I don't say I'm like a expert at this. I say we have to work together. It's your organization. I'm a resource, but it's your job, not mine. So I'm a resource. Sorry, I just want to say is like I'm working it out with him. I've told him I don't have the answers. We have to work it out together.
One of the things I love about you, Deborah, is that you've been working for so many years using strengths even prior to becoming certified with the Gallup instrument. And obviously you would use other instruments in your work and other tools. But it's fantastic to see the passion that you clearly have for strengths because you're having such great success with it. Can you talk a little bit about that and about how you use it with other tools or instruments and how it sort of compares to the other things that you've used and why you're feeling so passionate about it?
Well, I think I used to use lots of other things. I don't now. I'm a bit of a keep it simple, stupid sort of person. So I don't like doing loads of different things. I mean, they're valuable. Don't get me wrong, but I like keeping things simple. So you know, the work I do is, and I think it can be confusing if you use too many different things. So if somebody's committed, like I'm committed to it, this guy's committed to it. Okay, let's not do too many things because if you want to embed something. And you've got 360s and you've got the color things and you've got all kinds of other things, it gets very confusing to your people. So if you want to embed something, it has to be like everybody has, you know, you don't want to then bring something else in that's very confusing. So I'm in my work, I focus on vision, and I focus on purpose, and then I focus on values, and I focus on strengths.
Yeah. So I want to move on and talk a little bit about the work that you're doing with people in transition and people who are sort of career changers, and also sort of with women who are in transition specifically. But before we move on, just one final question. I don't know how often you see your clients, like this one person that you're talking about specifically, how much time elapses between your catch-ups with them, but I'd love to know what specific types of homework or things you give them to do between your sessions, and then we'll move on to your other work.
Yeah. So I work mostly once a month for 2 hours with my clients who are in a long sort of I've got I've committed to a year. I don't take people on for one session because I just think it just doesn't work. So I really enroll people in a longer term relationship with me, because that's how I can say you'll receive the results. And then at the end of every session, I always give people homework. So the homework will relate to whatever's come out of the session, but always the homework will relate to embedding one of the strengths or taking on one of the strengths. So could be, but I always give people like you want to take it on this strength for a month or 2 weeks or a week, or just let them decide. But I'm always I know that unless you focus on this, unless you take the actions, the life's going to take over and you won't even think about your strengths. So all the time I'm reinforcing that. I'm just saying to people, you have to. This has to be something like someone told you how to brush your teeth, right? And your mum kept saying, "Have you brushed your teeth? Have you brushed your teeth?" Well, I'm like your mum saying, "Have you brushed your teeth?" I'm like, okay, what's happening with this? What's happening with that? Are you remembering this? Because it all goes out of existence like that, because this organization I'm working with closely is so busy. They're making so many changes. I don't blame him for not remembering. So I'm his little reminder, and I keep sending him little things. And so the other thing is I don't just wait till I see him. I send him things, and I send him articles. So I'm reminding him, even if he never reads them, I'm reminding him, hello, strengths, we're here, and there's lots of potential, I think, for when further down the line working with him to sort of to design lots of wonderful ways of keeping it alive, but they would design it, not me, I think.
Fantastic. Let's move on and talk about how you're working with people who are transitioning.
Yeah, so I kind of get a lot of people, women particularly, who are in senior roles and they're stuck. They don't know how to move from one sort of work that they've been doing maybe all their life. So for instance, I'll give you an example. So a woman in the arts that I worked with for a year. So she used to be a musician. Then she moved out of being a musician into managing a whole bunch of musicians, right? And she'd been doing it for a long, long time. So and very capable and able in that profession. But she was fed up, and her company said, look, she'd also not been well because she was fed up. But she didn't see how she could transfer any skills, or that she lacked confidence in her capacity to move on, not for doing her job, but to move on. So I worked with her for a year. She had a dream, her dream was to move to go and live in this beautiful other part of Australia. She had a dream of the house. She wanted 2 dogs, but she was also working all the hours God sends. 2 dogs, part-time work, but like that was the dream. How the heck do you do that, right? So, at the end of the year of working, where we worked on her strengths, she saw, oh, strengths, I can transfer those into other areas. Oh, you mean I could become self-employed when I actually move to this place I've been dreaming about? So I don't know, so about a year later she moved. They were really happy she moved because they knew she was unhappy there. So they weren't like, oh, this is bad. And, a year and a half later, she sent me a picture of her sitting on the balcony with the 2 dogs in the area, telling me she'd got a work in the arts, which was 3 days a week, and, she was sort of human again. So that's the kind of work that I could give you tons of examples of those people. I mean, do you want any more, or?
Well, no, I mean, I think it's always encouraging to hear that, and I think that one of the values of knowing your strengths is really it is empowering, right? It's in some cases for many people they just don't really, the things that they're good at, they just never even think about those, right, or consider them because they've ticked those boxes.
Yeah, but it's also sort of it's like transferable, and it gives you freedom to see yourself as a different human being. You don't see yourself as a human being who's done a bunch of jobs. You see yourself as a human being with natural talents that you've developed into strengths through amazing career life changes, and you can take those things into any area you want. And she got, we looked at her career where she'd already done that, and I think when you can only do that if you have a coach.
Interesting point. And that when you do have a coach, what are the best questions, do you think, that those coaches can ask to sort of draw out that, what's hiding there or perhaps hidden from the client's view as far as, what they do best and where they could be moving forward? What are the questions you've had a really great success with when you're dealing with those transitional clients?
I think it's more listening. Just asking them, what are your dreams? What are your visions? What are your challenges? But listening. And listening not for them as a bunch of, not listening to people like they're a bunch of experiences or a bunch of concerns, but listening to them like their potential fully realized or their dreams fully realized. Listening that inside them. And I suppose this is the whole thing of individualization, realizing, which I do believe, that there is a pearl in every single person, and that pearl, if they get it and it's brought out of them, then they, I believe that human beings have enormous capacity, and we forget we have. And I think the strength stuff is very much about people's capacity, and also that people need to be responsible for developing themselves. So I really believe in responsibility. Like, I don't want to be a babysitter, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to see the potential in someone, have them hopefully see it. But most of that comes from listening. How are you listening to another human being? They might be broken or whatever when you meet them, but that's not who they are.
What do you do when you have a client who feels truly stuck where they are, in that they don't feel that they have the financial ability to move out of the current role, or for whatever reason they feel that they must stay there, but that it doesn't resonate with them or feel like they're getting to do what they do best every day? How do you coach someone like that?
I think it's hard. I've got one right now. It's hard. He's a bit stuck. But I think my role with him is he has a choice. So he has a choice, and he's the one who has to make. It's his life, it's his choices, but he has a choice, I think, is a big thing, and he gets that. He just hasn't. He's just I think the other thing is that work's a very dominating thing in our lives, isn't it? You know, work can be so dominating, and sometimes we can't see anything other than what's in front of our noses at the time, because we're so overwhelmed by the pressures that are upon us. And in Western Australia right now, people are losing jobs because of the mining industry decline, and so people are fearful. And I think, so, you know, the other thing is you have to be able to be with that, you know, be with a person struggling, going through their this struggle, and empathize. It's his life, it's not mine, and so it's not easy. But I think that's why it's important to stay with someone, you know, to know them and to stay with them, and for them to know that you're there, even if they're struggling. Because when they meet you again, you just remind them who they are, because they've forgotten.
And
I don't know if that answers that.
Well, I think we talk a lot, don't we, about strengths not being the what you do. It's not about the what you do, but more the how you do it and the why. And so even if it's just sort of revisiting again, you know, our mission and our purpose and how we can somehow achieve that, even when we're stuck in a certain role, by dialing up or dialing down some of our strengths, I think that can be useful.
Yeah.
I'm very keen, Deborah, to hear you talk a bit about the Hunger Project.
Yeah, well, that's a big one. My husband and I, we've been involved in the Hunger Project for we've been married 25 years in December, and we've been involved for that long in the Hunger Project. I've never been involved as long in anything other than my marriage or the Hunger Project. Yeah, and there have been times when I thought, oh, maybe I should move on to something else, but it just hasn't happened. So it's a global organization. I was very involved in it when I lived in the UK. I'm originally from the UK. We've only lived here in Western Australia for 8 years. So I was very involved in the UK. I've been involved globally. I've trained people in Bangladesh, and trained women leaders in Bangladesh just at the beginning when we were trying to get the women to become leaders, because we didn't have too many, but now all the women who are leading in Bangladesh are Bangladeshis. So, but yeah, so my husband and I, we're just really clear that that's our mission in life, is to contribute our finances and our time to ending hunger. We do what we can. Here I'm the chair of our board, and I love it. It's just a privilege to be involved. I'm involved. We do take people to our partner countries to see our work on the ground. We're very involved in an organization from out of Australia called Business Chicks. I don't know if you've heard of it, Anne.
Yes,
if you haven't, you should. Yeah. So we take women who raise money for the Hunger Project to our partner countries to learn from our women who are illiterate leaders, but incredibly bold, courageous leaders. So we take women on these leadership immersion programs, and I've been leading those every year for 4 years. So I'm going to Malawi on the 6th of May. It's part of my contribution. I love it, and we're, you know, what I love about the strengths work and the Hunger Project work is that I see them very connected. I mean, I have connectedness, so no wonder I see everything as connected. But those two things, I see them as very connected, because the principles of the Hunger Project and what is possible with regard to strengths, and I'd say, you know, the human spirit of strengths they're very aligned. So so one thing is that out of, you know, my leadership here in WA of the Hunger Project, I introduced the strengths to our staff. So, you know, I'm a volunteer. We're all volunteers, but we have a staff in Sydney, And Belinda Brosnan, who's also a Gallup-Strengths coach, is also involved with the Hunger Project. So she's done some work with the staff. So I just went away on the staff 3-day retreat and did individual strengths and team strengths with the Hunger Project staff. And Belinda and I are going to do a follow-up in June.
And just say again, for those of us, or those who don't know or have never heard of the Hunger Project globally, in a nutshell, how are you reaching? How are you eradicating hunger? What are you doing exactly? What are the steps that you're taking?
Okay, so our view is that hungry people are the solution, not the problem. So I'll say it again: hungry people are the solution, not the problem. So what we do is we work with hungry people who people have, who in some way aid and foreign, some of the foreign, what would I say, people trying to do their best to help have actually done the opposite. So they people can become dependent and not think that they can do it themselves. So we've always believed that hungry people are the solution, and we don't give aid. What we do is we train local leaders, and we've built up a very large number of local leaders in India, in Bangladesh, and Africa and Latin America. And so ours is a bottom-up approach, although we do work with the countries where we work, and we work with local governments, but we work from the village level up. And so we've got basic. Go on.
So you're not handing out food. You're not raising money to them to provide food. Are you teaching them then about how to plant crops and how to run small micro?
It depends. It depends. It depends. In each of our countries, we have principles which are the same, and our strategy in each country is based on those principles, but it's could be a different strategy. So, for instance, in India, where our strategy is to train panchayat women leaders who are elected women representatives in local councils. So the government many years ago said there weren't any women on local councils. Now we should have 50% of them. And then these women who were going to go on local councils had no training. So what we've said is we'll train those women. So we've trained hundreds and thousands of women in India in being a representative in your local area, and what that means, and how to have those things end hunger in your local area.
And have you been able to bring? Sorry. Have you been able to bring strengths into that work? I know you said you're using your strengths work with the staff of the Hunger Project in Sydney and so forth. Has strengths been part of the language that's being spoken in the outreach parts overseas? No. I think what's happening is because the staff in the Sydney office have got so much out of doing the strengths work, they've now communicated to our global office about strengths, and now I'm in a conversation with Claire about, hey, how do we mobilize strengths coaches around the world to help end hunger? So I've got a call with Jamie in New York this week to see if she can go into our global office, and it's going to be a big coordination issue, but I think with the will and with the commitment, it might be possible. What we might do is just pilot. We might pilot in Bangladesh, because that is where I've got a lot of relationships, and apparently you've got tons of strength coaches in India who might be able to speak Bengali. So I don't know. This is a whole new thing. I only talked to Claire last week, and it's really exciting to think that it could. There's so much possibility with strengths, and it's interesting to see where it'll go, and perhaps even some of our people who are on our Called to Coach Facebook site, our closed group there, perhaps if they have any interest in joining that effort, then they could perhaps post something on that page, and we could go from there. Jim, do you have any questions, anything coming through on the chat room that might be interesting for Deborah?
Deborah, I actually had a question for you. If folks wanted to get involved in the Hunger Project, what's the easiest way for them to do that? Should they contact you? Can they do it in the local area? How does that work?
I think they should just go on the website. So if they're in Australia, it's thp.org.au, thp.org.au, and if they're outside Australia, it would just be thp.org. And I think if they go and have a look on those websites, they'll get more information. And then I'm on our Australian website, so if they want to be in touch, or all the details of everybody involved is on there.
Okay, and then if they wanted to contact you or they had some questions, you're everywhere. You're in our Facebook group. But what's the easiest way to get in contact with you if they wanted to ask you about that?
I don't know. What do you think, Jim? What's the easiest way? You probably know better than me.
Do you have a website? Does the Values Partnership have a website?
Well, no, LinkedIn. That would be the best thing, because I'm in the middle of redoing my website. So I think LinkedIn. Just ask me. Just go onto my LinkedIn website. That's the best thing.
Okay, very good. You're also a part of our Facebook group, the Call to Coach Facebook group. They could probably tag you there if they had a question.
In that Yammer as well. Yammer.
Okay, yeah, and that one's closed. That's for our certified coaches that are in there, the coaches that have taken the training. But JB King, who answers, I think, every question that hits the Facebook page, had a question. He's out there listening tonight live, and he said, back to a question you'd had about integrating into a company, he said he wondered how long-term is long-term when you're integrating into a company. Does that mean 6 months, 2 years, 5 years? When you were talking about that, what does that mean?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm being honest. I have no idea what it means. I think, well, I tell you what I would say offhand would be, in this particular organization, when it reaches the people they're trying to make a difference with, that's when I'd say that we've done our job. Just when it goes, because this is a 1,000 organization who are providing services to clients. If it reaches the client, oh my goodness, that would be amazing.
Okay.
But I have no idea. Maybe JB knows more than me, and he can tell me how long it would take.
Well, I think you're right.
I would imagine it would depend on the company that you're working with too, right? Some just move more quickly than others. I'd love to know, when I talk to certified coaches, I'd love to ask them what their favorite resources are at the moment, if they're following a certain thought leader, or if there's a blog that they get a lot from, or even strengths resources. Deborah, where are you going? And even Jim, you as well. Where do you go to? What are you finding to be really, really useful resources at the moment?
I tell you what, I have in my handbag. I have in my handbag that paired up thing. The paired up booklet. I love the paired up booklet. So I carry that, and then I have the cards that are just they're small cards, and you get the domain. And I find those two things the most helpful, the most helpful things. And why is because I think those cards summarize everything so well, and I love the being and the doing, and there's a bit for everybody there, so I really like that. But I also like the card that has all the domains on the top, and I find that very easy to follow, and people like those. And then I love the paired up, because people can't see people still see the linear. Look at their strengths linearly, and I love the paired up because they suddenly get to see, oh, these things interact, and these things are not, and when they see that, it gets them to look at their strengths in a very different manner. So those are my two really favorite things. I have to say that I don't read too many blogs, so that's just my thing.
Well, let me say too. When we think about when you talked about the next series on Theme Thursday will be strengths pairs, and so we're going to talk about that. We've got tons of material to be able to cover there when we do that, and so Kurt will break from we'll get all 34 in by the end of the summer, and then we'll launch into. He has a new book coming out, and that will launch with the book called Expanding Your Strengths. And part of that is that idea of the paired up. So the materials available to you through the kit that you got that here by the end of the summer, everyone will be able to buy that in that form.
Oh, that's
of
amazing.
Kurt's new book. So we're super excited about that. We'll certainly influence the new theme Thursday, because when we get, everybody's asking me that, what will you do when you're done with 34? Well, there's combinations to cover, and that will go for a while. So we have that coming on the horizon. And anything else you want to do before we wrap this thing up?
Look, no, I was just going to ask the same question of Deborah. Is there something that I didn't ask you about that you think is really important for everyone to hear before we wrap it up?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Thank you for
we covered
asking.
Everything. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome,
Fantastic.
awesome. Well, hey, I found it a little ironic that we were doing an Australian Called to Coach with 2 Americans and a Brit, but the spirit is there, and with both of you in Australia, and of course I just love what's going on. It's been fun for me on the outside to watch what's going on in Australia and New Zealand and that part of the country. Super excited about it. And you mentioned earlier, I can't wait to find a way to get myself to Australia for some reason, to get some things done. Would love to visit you guys there, and making some good friends in Australia and New Zealand as well. So try and figure out a way to get that done. And Ann, congratulations for getting through your first Called to Coach. Great job.
Ah, fantastic. I loved it. Thanks so much for having me.
No, good to have you on here. And Deborah, thank you for coming on as well. I will remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available. Everything we talked about is really available in the Gallup Strengths Center, so just go to Gallup-Strengthscenter.com, send us your questions and comments. You can send those in an email, coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video for this program if you want to go back to some of the ones that we have in the past. And all the links to our social networking stuff over at coaching.gallup.com. Speaking of the Strengths Center, and we've got some training going on in the area there. If folks were interested in doing that, we have a list of everything that's available, but give us the short list of what's going on in your part of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like to come to beautiful Sydney, we're doing an accelerated strengths coaching course June 1st to 5th is our next one in Sydney. After that, we'll have one September. So first week of September, or 7th to the 11th, also in Sydney. And then there will be one end of the year, so December 7th to the 11th. We've got a certification course for coaches in Auckland, New Zealand, in October. So that'd be the 12th to 16th. And some high performance management courses. We have one in Wellington, June 18th to 19th, one in Auckland in November, and also one in Sydney, again, in September. So be very happy to have people come join those and join the family.
Oh, and I volunteer for all of them, so I'll find a
Come
way
on down.
to get out there. If you haven't, it would be great. Although it's winter for you guys, and it's be summer here, so it seemed kind of silly.
Got to tell you, our winter's not bad.
No, it's not like a Nebraska winter, that's for sure. I'll also remind individuals that if you haven't downloaded your top 5 for your iPhone or Android, we do have those available now. This is on the iPhone, but we have an Android platform as well. Those are free. A lot of people, we ask what are your top 5, they can't remember. A great way to do that is put it on your phone, take a screenshot, then make that your lock screen. The average person looks at their lock screen 63 times a day. In 3 days, you'll have it memorized. So that's just one of those little tips and tricks that I tell people all the time, a great way to get it done. And I remind you as well that if you enjoyed this program, we invite you to share it with others. So find ways socially to get that out. And we look forward to the next Call to Coach, and we'll say with that, goodbye, everyone.